The sound of coins falling to the ground echoed like a reminder of everything she had lost in life. Mariana crouched down slowly, picking up each peso with trembling fingers, while the stares of passers-by pierced through her like silent daggers. Welcome back. Tell me from which city you're watching me, and what time it is there. Now listen to this story. In the dusty margins of Mexico City, where gray concrete houses squeeze against each other like crooked teeth, Mariana Castellanos walked every morning with the weight of the world on her 32-year-old shoulders. Her black shoes, worn at the soles but polished with pride, marked the rhythm of a routine she had learned to carry like an invisible cross. The smell of freshly made tortillas mixed with truck exhaust on Insurgentes Avenue, and she breathed deeply that familiar air that smelled of struggle and lost hope. Her 5-year-old son Mateo waited for her every afternoon at the entrance of Benito Juarez Elementary School with the brightest eyes she had ever seen, those eyes that looked at her as if she were the most powerful woman in the world, not knowing that every night she cried silently, wondering if she would be enough, if her love would be enough to fill all the empty spaces that money couldn't cover. Mariana worked at Hogar y Más, a home goods store located on a bustling corner downtown, 8 hours daily organizing products, serving customers who sometimes treated her as if she were invisible, counting every peso she earned as if it were her last. Her boss, Mr. Ramirez, was a 50-year-old man who had learned to see his employees as numbers on a spreadsheet. Mariana, I need you to stay an extra hour, he would tell her without looking up from his newspaper, without asking if she had to pick up her son, without caring that she had already been on her feet for 10 hours. Of course, Mr. Ramirez, she always replied, because she had learned that a single mother doesn't have the luxury of saying no, but she had learned that her value as a woman was measured by her capacity for silent sacrifice. Afternoons became a race against time. Pick up Mateo from school, prepare food with the cheapest ingredients from San Juan Market, help him with homework while her own eyelids felt heavy as stones. On weekends she cleaned houses in Las Lomas, in mansions where she earned in one day what others spent on a meal. She saw the family photos in silver frames, the perfect gardens, the cars that were worth more than everything she could earn in 5 years. Mommy, why don't we have a garden like this? Mateo had asked her one Saturday, while she vacuumed the Persian rug in a living room bigger than their entire apartment. Because we have something better, mijo. We have each other, she had responded, but inside, another little piece of her heart had broken. One October afternoon, while walking on Juarez Avenue after picking up Mateo from school, something caught her attention on the sidewalk. Among the dry leaves that the wind was dragging, something black was shining. She approached and found a leather wallet, elegant, the type she saw in store windows of shops she never dared to enter. She picked it up carefully, as if it were a sacred object. She opened it and felt the air leave her lungs. There was more money than she had ever seen together in her entire life, thousands of pesos in new bills, credit cards with names she didn't know, official identifications, and in the center, a business card. Alejandro Rivas, General Director, Innovatech Solutions. Mateo tugged at her navy blue skirt, the same one she had worn every day for the past 6 months. Mommy, what is that? It's someone's wallet, mijo, someone who must be very worried. That night, after putting Mateo to bed, Mariana stayed awake looking at the wallet on the table in her small kitchen. The money inside could solve all her immediate problems. She could pay the rent she'd owed for 2 months, buy new shoes for Mateo, fill the pantry. She could breathe easily for the first time in years. But every time she reached toward the money, she heard her grandmother Elena's voice. Mija, honesty is the only thing they can't take away from you. You might be poor, you might be alone, but if you're honest, you'll always be able to look at yourself in the mirror. The next day, she took 2 buses and a metro to reach the glass and steel building that rose in the business heart of the city. She had never been in a place like this. The revolving doors, the marble floors, the men and women dressed in suits that cost more than her 6-month salary. She felt small, invisible, out of place. The security guard looked her up and down when she approached. How can I help you, miss? I've come to return this, she said, showing the wallet. It belongs to Mr. Alejandro Rivas. The guard frowned, as if he couldn't believe that someone like her would have something that belonged to the General Director. At the launch ceremony, standing in the National Palace next to the President of the Republic, Mariana saw among the crowd the faces of women who had been her companions in struggle. Doña Carmen, who now directed a national training program, Clara, whose community center had become a model for 100 other centers, Sofia, the woman who had approached her after her conference, and who now directed the program's expansion in the north of the country. 8 years ago, she said in her speech, I found a wallet on the street. Today, thanks to that moment, millions of Mexicans are going to have opportunities that didn't exist before. But the truth is that the wallet was never lost. The opportunities were never lost. They were just waiting for someone to see them. She paused, looking for Mateo in the crowd. Her son, now 14 years old, waved at her with a smile he had inherited from her, but that shone with a confidence she had had to learn. My grandmother taught me that honesty is the only thing they can't take away from you. Today I want to add something to that wisdom. Honesty isn't just returning what isn't yours. It's also claiming what is yours. Your talent, your dreams, your place in the world. All of that is yours, and no one has the right to convince you otherwise. The applause resonated throughout the palace, but what moved Mariana most was seeing among the audience women who resembled who she had been years ago. Single mothers, service employees, market vendors, all applauding not just for what she had achieved, but for what her success meant for their own possibilities. After the ceremony, a reporter asked her, "Mrs. Rivas, if you could speak to the Mariana from 8 years ago, the one who found the wallet, what would you tell her?" Mariana smiled, thinking of that young woman who had walked to the glass building with trembling hands and a wallet that didn't belong to her. "I would tell her that returning the wallet was just the first step, that the most important thing wasn't proving her honesty to others, but discovering her own value. I would tell her that all the difficult moments that would come after would be worth it, and I would tell her that her son would be proud of the woman she would become." She paused, looking toward the horizon of the city that had witnessed her entire transformation. "But above all, I would tell her to trust herself, that the change she was looking for in her life was already inside her. She just needed the courage to let it out." 3 years after the implementation of the national policy, Mariana received an invitation she had never imagined possible. The National Autonomous University of Mexico wanted to award her an honorary doctorate in social development. The ceremony would take place in the same stadium where thousands of students graduated every year, but this time she, a woman who had never set foot in a university as a student, would be on stage as an honorary doctorate. "It's surreal," she confided to Alejandro while trying on the academic gown. 10 years ago, I was cleaning the offices of executives who had framed degrees on their walls. I never thought I would ever have one. It's not just a degree, Mariana. It's recognition of what you've achieved, of the difference you've made in millions of lives. Sometimes I wonder if the Mariana from 10 years ago could have imagined this. That Mariana had the same intelligence, the same determination, the same heart you have now. She just lacked opportunities. On the day of the ceremony, while walking through the university campus, Mariana encountered a young student wearing a t-shirt with the phrase "Honest Hands" printed on the front. "Excuse me," the student said, "are you Mariana Rivas?" "Yes, I am. My mom was a beneficiary of one of your programs in Guadalajara. She had lost her job at a factory and thought there was no hope for her at 45 years old. Now she has her own catering business and is paying for my medical studies." The young woman's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to tell you that you didn't just change my mom's life, you changed our entire family's future." Mariana hugged the student, feeling the weight and responsibility of what her work meant for real people with names and faces and dreams. In her doctorate acceptance speech, Mariana spoke about transformation, not just personal but social. "When I picked up that wallet 8 years ago, I was picking up more than money and documents. I was picking up the opportunity to prove that a person's value isn't measured by their bank account or their zip code. I was picking up the possibility that Mexico would realize it has millions of wasted talents, just because they were born in the wrong place." She saw Mateo among the audience, now 17 years old, who had decided to study social engineering because he wanted to create systems that make returning the wallet automatic, not exceptional. "My son asked me recently why we keep talking about that wallet after so many years. I told him it's because that wallet represents something bigger than the physical object. It represents the moment when I decided I deserved something better, not just for me but for all women like me." After the ceremony, there was a reception in the university's botanical garden. Mariana found herself surrounded by academics, business people, government officials, all wanting to talk to her about her theories of community development, her intervention models, her plans for the future. But what moved her most was seeing Clara mixing in that crowd, conversing confidently with university professors about the training methodologies she had developed at her community center. Who would have thought? Clara whispered in her ear when they crossed paths, that 2 girls from the neighborhood would end up teaching the doctors. "We always knew we had something to say," Mariana replied. "We just needed someone to listen to us." 6 months later, Mariana received an even more surprising invitation. The United Nations wanted to consult with her to develop a global model of corporate community development based on the Mexican experience. "Do you realize what this means?" Alejandro asked while they read the official letter together. "It means maybe we can prevent millions of women around the world from going through what I went through. Maybe we can create systems where returning the wallet isn't extraordinary, but normal." The first meeting would take place in New York, at the United Nations building. Mariana had never left Mexico, never flown on a plane, never been in an international forum. "I'm scared," she admitted the night before the trip. "Scared of what? Of not being up to it. Of them realizing I don't know enough about international policy, about global economics, about all those topics they study in expensive universities. Alejandro took her hands. Mariana, they're going to discover the same thing I discovered 8 years ago, that you have a wisdom that can't be learned in any university, that you understand things about human nature and social justice that they only know in theory. And if it's not enough, then you give them the opportunity to learn something new. In New York, Mariana found herself in a conference room with representatives from 50 countries, all with impressive credentials and international experience. During the first few days, she felt small and inadequate, listening more than speaking, trying to understand the complexities of implementing social programs on a global scale. But on the third day, during a presentation on successful poverty reduction models, something changed. The presenter, a British academic with multiple doctorates, was talking about vulnerable populations and development indicators as if they were abstract concepts. Mariana raised her hand. "Excuse me," she said, "but when you talk about vulnerable populations, are you referring to women like me? Women who work 2 jobs to support their children, who clean your offices after you leave, who count coins to buy milk?" The silence in the room was total. "Because if so, I think you need to understand something fundamental. We're not vulnerable by nature. We're vulnerable because the systems you design keep us vulnerable." What followed was the most effective presentation Mariana had given in her life. Without PowerPoint, without graphs, without academic jargon, she told her story and the story of the thousands of women she had met in her work. You talk about reducing poverty as if it were a technical problem solved with better policies. But poverty isn't just lack of money. It's lack of opportunities, lack of respect, lack of hope. And those things aren't solved with programs designed in elegant offices by people who have never had to choose between paying rent or buying medicine for their children. At the end of her intervention, the entire room stood up to applaud. The representative from Rwanda approached afterward. "Mrs. Rivas," he said, "you just articulated in 10 minutes what we have been trying to explain in our country for years. Would you be willing to come to Kigali to help us design programs that really work for our communities?" During the following 2 years, Mariana traveled through 4 continents, working with governments and organizations to adapt her model to different cultures and contexts. She saw slums in Mumbai that reminded her of her own childhood, met women entrepreneurs in Nairobi who had the same determination she had seen in the mothers of her neighborhood, worked with indigenous communities in Guatemala that faced challenges similar to those she had lived. But everywhere, the lesson was the same. When you give people real opportunities and treat them with genuine respect, they're capable of extraordinary things. "You know what's most impactful about this whole process," she told Alejandro during one of her return trips to Mexico, "that the problem isn't lack of talent or lack of desire to work. The problem is that systems are designed for certain types of people to fail. And is that changing? Slowly. But more and more people understand that it's not charity we need, it's justice." In Mexico, the model had expanded throughout the country. More than 1,000 community centers were operating. They had directly created more than 50,000 jobs, and had indirectly benefited more than 500,000 families. Success stories multiplied, women who had gone from cleaning houses to directing cooperatives, young people who had avoided falling into gangs because they had training opportunities, entire families who had emerged from extreme poverty. But for Mariana, statistics were never as important as individual stories, like that of Mercedes, a 50-year-old woman in Oaxaca who had learned to use computers at one of the centers and now directed a digital literacy program for older adults. Mrs. Mariana, Mercedes had told her during a visit, "I thought I was too old to learn new things. My daughter told me computers were for young people, but you proved that it's never too late to change your life." Or that of Roberto, a 19-year-old in Tijuana, who had been about to join a cartel before the community center in his neighborhood offered him welding training. "Now I have my own workshop," he had told her proudly. "I earn more money honestly than I ever would have earned on the street, and I can sleep peacefully at night." These stories repeated throughout the country, throughout the continent, throughout the world. On the 10th anniversary of the day she had found the wallet, Mariana organized a special event in the central plaza of her childhood neighborhood, not in an elegant hotel or convention center, but in the same place where she had been invisible for so many years. Thousands of people came, program beneficiaries, government officials, business people, community leaders from other countries, international journalists. But what most excited Mariana was seeing her grandmother Elena, now 87 years old, sitting in the front row with a smile of pride that illuminated the entire plaza. "Mija," her grandmother had told her that morning, "I always knew you were going to do something important with your life. I just didn't know it was going to be so big. Did you know that finding that wallet would change everything? I knew you couldn't do anything but return it. And I knew that when you do the right thing, even when it's difficult, the universe finds ways to reward you." In her speech, Mariana talked about the power of seemingly insignificant moments. 10 years ago, in this same plaza, I was an invisible woman. I walked these streets every day,
and no one saw my potential, my dreams, my capacity. Not even I saw it completely. But one moment, a simple decision to return something that didn't belong to me, changed the trajectory of my life, and the lives of millions of people. She saw Mateo among the crowd, now 20 years old, and a senior engineering student, who had decided to write his thesis on automated systems for equitable distribution of economic opportunities. My son asked me recently if I regret anything from these 10 years. I told him I only regret one thing, having taken so long to believe in myself. After the event, while walking through the streets of the neighborhood that had seen her grow up, Mariana encountered a young woman, perhaps 25 years old, who was carrying a small child, and seemed lost. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Are you Mariana Rivas?" "Yes, I am." I just lost my job at a factory. I'm a single mother, I don't have university studies, I don't know what I'm going to do. Someone told me you might be able to help me." Mariana felt a familiar emotion, a mixture of compassion and determination she had learned to recognize as her call to action. "What's your name?" "Patricia." "Patricia, have you heard about our community centers?" "A little, but I don't know if they're for people like me." Mariana smiled, remembering having had that same conversation with herself years ago. "Patricia, let me ask you something. If someone lost their wallet on the street, would you return it?" The woman looked at her confused. "Well, yes, of course."
That's the right thing to do. Then you're exactly the type of person we created these programs for. Come, let's walk to the community center. I'm going to introduce you to Clara, the director. She's going to help you discover everything you're capable of doing. While they walked through the familiar streets, Patricia carrying her son and Mariana, remembering her own first uncertain steps toward a different life, Mariana thought about the cycle that was completing, about all the lost wallets that continued waiting to be found, about all the women like Patricia who were about to discover their own value, about all the opportunities waiting to be created. "Can I ask you something?" Patricia said as they walked. "Of course. Is it true that you really started all this just because you returned the wallet?" Mariana stopped for a moment, looking toward the plaza where she had just spoken to thousands of people, then toward the community center they were heading to, finally toward Patricia and her son. "No," she said finally. "All this started because I decided to believe I deserved something better. The wallet was just the excuse the universe gave me to begin." They arrived at the community center just as Clara was closing the day's activities. When she saw Mariana accompanied by Patricia, she immediately understood the situation. "Patricia," Clara said with the warmth she had learned to perfect in years of receiving scared women full of doubts, "I'm very pleased to meet you. Why don't we sit down and talk about what you like to do, what you're good at, and how we can help you turn that into an opportunity?" While Patricia settled in with her son in the play area and began talking with Clara, Mariana stood at the center's entrance, watching the scene that had repeated thousands of times over the years. Alejandro arrived shortly after, as he had done so many times during all those years. "Another Patricia?" he asked, hugging her from behind. "Another Patricia," Mariana confirmed, leaning against him. "And tomorrow there will be another, and the day after tomorrow another one. Don't you ever get tired? Would you get tired of breathing?" They stayed like that for a few minutes, watching Clara explain to Patricia the different training options, how the child played happily with the center's toys, how slowly Patricia's posture straightened as she realized there were options, that there was hope. "You know what I like most about all this?" Mariana asked Alejandro. "What?" "That I'm no longer alone returning wallets. Now we're thousands of people creating a world where not so many wallets get lost in the first place." That night when they got home they found Mateo working on his computer at the dining room table, surrounded by books and papers about systems theory. "How's the thesis going?" Mariana asked. "Good, I think. I'm designing an algorithm that could predict which communities have the greatest probability of benefiting from programs like yours, based on socioeconomic indicators and internal migration patterns." Mariana sat next to her son, looking at the complex equations on the screen. "You know what I like most about what you're doing?" "What?" "That you're trying to make returning the wallet automatic. That you're creating systems where the right thing is also the obvious thing." Mateo smiled. "I learned from the best." "No, mijo. You're improving what I started. You're taking it to the next level." Later that night, while Alejandro slept and the house was silent, Mariana sat in her office and opened her laptop. She had a ritual she had maintained for the past 5 years. Every night she wrote a letter she never sent to the woman she had been 10 years ago. "Dear Mariana, from 10 years ago," she wrote. "Tomorrow you're going to find a wallet on the street. You're going to doubt. You're going to be afraid. You're going to think about all the money inside, and everything you could solve with it. But you're going to do the right thing anyway, because that's who you are. What you don't know is that wallet isn't the end of something, but the beginning. The beginning of discovering that your value has nothing to do with your bank account or your address. The beginning of understanding that your story matters, that your perspective is valuable,
that your voice deserves to be heard. You're going to be afraid many times in the coming years. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to feel like you're not enough, that you don't know enough, that you don't deserve the opportunities that are going to open up. But every time you feel that, remember why you returned the wallet. Because you knew, in the deepest part of your being, that doing the right thing was more important than doing the easy thing. That instinct, that moral compass you have, is going to take you to places you can't even imagine now.
It's going to take you to elegant offices where your opinion will change national policies, to international conferences where your story will inspire people from other continents, to moments where you realize you didn't just change your life but the lives of millions of people. But more important than all that, it's going to lead you to discover who you really are, not the label others put on you, not the limitations you accepted, but the extraordinary woman you were always destined to be. Your son is going to be proud, your grandmother is going to be proud, and someday you're also going to be proud of the woman you were brave enough to become. Return the wallet, Mariana, and then start living the life you deserve. With love and admiration, the woman you're going to become. She saved the document in the folder where she had hundreds of similar letters, each one a reminder of how far she had come, each one a testimony to the power of moments that seem small but change everything. The next day, Mariana had a meeting with the foundation team they had established to administer all the programs. She arrived early at the office, as she always did, and found herself with a surprise. On her desk was an elegant envelope with the Vatican seal. With trembling hands she opened it. It was a personal invitation from Pope Francis to participate in a symposium on social justice and human dignity. The letter, written in Spanish, said, "Dear Mrs. Rivas, your work transforming lives through recognition of the inherent dignity of each person is a living testimony of the values our faith calls us to defend. It would be an honor to have your perspective in our discussions about how to create a more just world." Mariana had to sit down. A girl who had grown up going to Sunday Mass at a small neighborhood church, who had prayed for years asking for opportunities to get ahead, was now being invited by the leader of her faith to share her ideas about social justice. When Alejandro arrived an hour later, he found her still sitting, with the letter in her hands and tears in her eyes. "What happened? Is everything okay?" "The Pope," she said simply, showing him the letter. "The Pope wants me to go to the Vatican." Alejandro read the invitation, and was as surprised as she was. "Mariana, do you realize what this means?" "It means a store employee from a poor neighborhood in Mexico City is going to talk to the Pope about social justice. It means your voice, your experience, your wisdom are now recognized at the highest global level." 3 months later, Mariana was standing in one of the most beautiful rooms at the Vatican, surrounded by cardinals, theologians, social activists from around the world, and academics who had dedicated their lives to the study of social justice. When her turn came to speak, Mariana approached the podium, and for a moment felt like she was back at that first corporate meeting, feeling small and inadequate. But then she saw among the audience, Patricia, the woman she had met after the 10th anniversary event, had progressed so much in the program that she now directed her own sewing cooperative and had been invited to represent program beneficiaries. Patricia smiled at her and made a small gesture of encouragement, the same gesture Clara had made to Mariana so many years ago when she needed courage. "Your Holiness," Mariana began, addressing Pope Francis directly, 15 years ago, I was invisible. I cleaned the offices of important people after midnight, raised my son alone, counted coins to buy milk. In that world, my voice didn't matter. My ideas had no value. My potential was ignored." She stopped, looking around the room full of powerful and influential people. But invisibility isn't a problem of invisible people. It's a problem of people who choose not to see. And when we decide to really see, when we recognize the dignity and potential in every human being, we're not doing charity, we're doing justice. What followed was a 20-minute presentation on how the programs she had developed not only changed economic circumstances, but restored human dignity, created hope, and demonstrated that potential has no zip code. At the end of her presentation, Pope Francis approached her. "Mrs. Rivas," he told her in his Argentinian Spanish, "you have found a way to make the social gospel practical and effective. You have demonstrated that when we treat people as images of God, that's when they can truly flourish. Your Holiness, I only returned a wallet. Everything else was the result of someone deciding to see me as a complete human being." "Exactly," the Pope smiled. "And now you're helping the world see millions of people as complete human beings. That's the definition of practical sainthood." Leaving the Vatican, Mariana walked through the streets of Rome with Patricia, reflecting on the path that had brought them there. Mrs. Mariana, Patricia sighed. "When I met you 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I had no hope, no future. And look where I am now. Where are you now, Patricia?" "I'm walking through Rome after talking to the Pope about social justice. My cooperative employs 30 women. My son is in a good school. But more important than that, I respect myself. I know I have value. I know my voice matters. I know I can make a difference. And how does that feel? Like I found the wallet on the street and decided to return it. Mariana laughed, understanding the metaphor perfectly. Exactly. Every time we decide to do the right thing, even when it's difficult, we're returning the wallet. And every time we return the wallet, something magical happens. What happens? We discover who we really are. 2 years after the Vatican trip, Mariana was back in Mexico, preparing for her most ambitious new project, a popular university that would offer high-quality education, completely free to people from marginalized communities. A university, Alejandro had asked when she told him about the idea. Don't you think it's too big even for you? 15 years ago, returning a wallet seemed too risky for me. 10 years ago, accepting a job at a corporate company seemed impossible. 15 years ago, changing national policies seemed unreachable. Now creating a university, it's just the next logical step. The Honest Hands, popular university would open its doors with 5 majors: community development, social enterprise, technology for social good, community leadership, and social innovation. All professors would be a mix of traditional academics and community leaders like Clara, Patricia, and dozens of other program graduates. The idea, Mariana explained at the press conference to announce the university, is to create leaders who understand both theory and practice, who have lived the problems they want to solve, who know that true education comes from both books and life. Mateo, now 24 years old with a master's degree in social systems from MIT, would be the university's first academic director. My mom taught me that returning the wallet was the right thing to do, he said in his speech accepting the position. Now I want to teach thousands of students how to create systems where returning the wallet is natural, obvious, automatic. The campus would be built on land donated by the Mexico City government, right next to the neighborhood where Mariana had grown up. It would be a beautiful but not ostentatious campus, accessible but not condescending, academic but not elitist. During construction, Mariana divided her time between supervising the work, traveling to other countries for consulting, and maintaining existing programs. But every afternoon, without fail, she made time to walk through her childhood neighborhood. One afternoon, while walking on the same sidewalk where she had found the wallet 15 years ago, she encountered a group of children playing in the plaza. "Mrs. Mariana," shouted an 8-year-old girl. "My teacher says you're famous." Mariana crouched down to the girl's height. "What do you think?" "I think you're from here. Like us." "Exactly. I'm from here. Like you. And do you know what that means?" "What?" "It means you can also do important things when you grow up. You don't have to be from somewhere else, or have rich parents, or speak differently. You just have to be honest, work hard, and believe in yourselves. Like you when you found the wallet?" Mariana smiled. It was already a local legend, the story all the neighborhood children knew. Exactly like when I found the wallet. But you don't have to wait to find a lost wallet. You can start right now being honest, being kind, being brave. And if we're not smart enough, mija, intelligence isn't something you're born with or without. Intelligence is something you develop when you never stop asking questions, never stop learning, never stop trying new things. She stood up and looked at all the children who had gathered around. "Will you promise me something? Promise me, you'll never let anyone tell you that you can't do something just because you live here, just because your parents don't have much money, just because you speak like we speak here." "We promise," they all shouted in unison. "And promise me that if you ever find something that isn't yours, you'll return it." "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do." That night, Mariana told Alejandro about the conversation while they had dinner on the terrace of their house, looking toward the neighborhood where the university was being built. "You know what's most incredible about all this?" she told him. "What?" "That I'm no longer the exception. I'm no longer the only woman from this neighborhood who managed to get out. Now we're hundreds." Clara, Patricia, Mercedes, all the women they directo community centers. All ulehiponintos de developed our most businesses. All ulehiponintos de traditional universities with scholarships we got for them. And soon there will be thousands more with the university. Exactly. We're no longer going to need hope stories, because hope is going to be normal. The university opened its doors 2 years later, with 500 students in its first generation. The inauguration ceremony took place in the neighborhood's central plaza, the same place where Mariana had given her first public speeches. Among the students were children of domestic workers, young people who had worked since childhood to help their families, single mothers who had decided to return to their studies, people who had been invisible all their lives and now had the opportunity to develop their full potential. In her inaugural speech as university rector, Mariana spoke about the purpose of education. "This university isn't here to take you out of your communities," she said, looking at the hopeful faces of the students. It's here to prepare you to return to your communities with tools to transform them. We don't want you to forget where you come from. We want you to remember where you come from, and use that as your superpower. She saw her grandmother Elena among the audience, now 92 years old, sitting in a wheelchair, but with bright eyes full of pride. My grandmother taught me that honesty is the only thing they can't take away from you. Today I want to add something to that wisdom. Education can't be taken away from you either. And when you combine honesty with education, when you combine solid values with knowledge, when you combine love for your community with tools to transform it, that's when real magic happens. Among the students in the first generation was Patricia's daughter, a 70-year-old who had decided to study community leadership. Why do you want to study community leadership? Mariana had asked during the admission interview. Because my mom told me what you did for her, and I want to do the same for other women. I want to be someone who helps other people discover what they're worth. And how do you plan to do that? By teaching them to return wallets. Not real wallets, but opportunities, hope, dignity, all those things that others lost and that we can help them find again. 5 years after opening the university, Mariana received a call that would once again change the course of her life. Mrs. Rivas, this is the secretary of the Swedish Academy. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee would like to speak with you. Mariana thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. 3 months later she was in Stockholm, accompanied by Alejandro, Mateo, Clara, Patricia, and her grandmother Elena, receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her work in creating social justice systems that restore human dignity and demonstrate that peaceful and lasting change is possible when we recognize the inherent value of each person. In her acceptance speech, Mariana didn't talk about policies or theories or complex systems, she talked about a wallet. 20 years ago, she began, I was an invisible woman walking through the streets of Mexico City. I was 32 years old, a single mother, worked 2 jobs to pay rent, and most of the world acted as if I didn't exist. She paused, looking at the audience of world leaders, academics and dignitaries. One day I found a wallet on the street. It had more money than I had seen in my life. I could have solved all my immediate problems. But my grandmother had taught me that honesty is the only thing no one can take away from you, so I returned the wallet. She saw her grandmother in the front row, smiling with tears in her eyes. What I didn't know was that by returning that wallet, I wasn't just being honest. I was demonstrating something the world needed to see, that people like me, invisible people, people others dismiss, also have values, also have dignity, also have potential. Her voice became stronger, more confident. This prize isn't mine. It belongs to all the women who clean offices at midnight and dream of something better. It belongs to all the single mothers who count coins to buy milk but never stop believing their children deserve a better future. It belongs to all the invisible people who do the right thing even when no one is watching, even when no one applauds them, even when no one recognizes their value. The applause filled the auditorium, but Mariana kept speaking. If this prize teaches anything, it's that there are no insignificant people. There are no stories that don't matter. There are no lives that don't have value. Each one of us has the power to create change, to return wallets, to recognize dignity in others. She finished looking directly at the camera broadcasting live to the whole world. If there's someone watching this who feels invisible, who thinks their life doesn't matter, who believes they can't change anything, I want them to know they're wrong. Your honesty matters. Your kindness matters. Your voice matters. You don't need to find a wallet on the street to change the world. You just need to decide to be the person who would return the wallet, and the world will find ways to give you opportunities to show who you really are. After the ceremony, during the reception, Mariana found herself surrounded by world leaders, all wanting to talk to her about her programs, her ideas, her future plans. But what moved her most was meeting a young woman, perhaps 20 years old, who approached timidly. Mrs. Rivas, she said in English, with an African accent, I'm from Somalia. I saw your speech on television 5 years ago, when you spoke at the United Nations. That night I decided I could also do something to change my community. Now I run an education program for refugee girls. I just wanted to say thank you. What's your name? Amina. Amina, can I ask you something? If you found a wallet on the street, would you return it? The young woman smiled. Of course, that's the right thing to do. Then you already have everything you need to change the world. The rest are just details. That night, in her hotel room in Stockholm, Mariana wrote another of her nighttime letters. But this time, it wasn't for her past self. To all women who feel invisible, I see you. I see how you get up before dawn to prepare breakfast for your families. I see how you count coins to buy what's necessary. I see how you work jobs others consider insignificant, but that you do with dignity. I see how you sacrifice silently for your children, for your parents, for your communities. I see your strength when you carry responsibilities that would break others. I see your wisdom when you find creative solutions to problems others can't even imagine. I see your love when you keep giving even when you have nothing left to give. I see you, and I want you to know that you're worth more than the world has told you. that your voices matter more than you've believed, that your potential is bigger than you've imagined. You don't need to find a lost wallet to change your lives. You just need to believe you deserve something better, and be willing to work to get it. You just need to decide you're going to return all of life's wallets, that you're going to be honest even when it's difficult, that you're going to help others even when no one asks you to, that you're going to do the right thing even when no one is watching. When you do that, when you live with that integrity, the universe will find ways to give you opportunities. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in the way you expect, but the opportunities will come, and when they come, accept them. Don't let fear paralyze you. Don't let doubt stop you. Don't let others tell you that you're not enough. You are enough. You have always been enough. You just needed someone to tell you so. I see you. I value you. And I believe in you. With all my love and respect, Mariana. She closed the laptop and stood looking out the window at the Stockholm streets, thinking about all the women around the world who at that moment were facing the same challenges she had faced 20 years ago. The next day, back in Mexico, Mariana announced her new project, a global foundation that would take the community center's model to 50 countries over the next 10 years. Don't you think you've done enough? Alejandro asked while they reviewed the documents for establishing the new foundation. Would you stop breathing because you've already breathed enough? Point taken. While there are women counting coins to buy milk, while there's talent wasted by circumstances of birth, while there are lost wallets waiting to be returned, I haven't done enough. The Returned Wallets Foundation began operations 6 months later, with offices in 10 countries. Each office would be directed by a local woman who had emerged from circumstances similar to Mariana's, who understood from the inside the challenges faced by women in her community. In India, Priya, a former domestic worker who now had a master's degree in social work. In Nigeria, Aduni, who had gone from selling vegetables on the street to directing a women merchants cooperative. In Peru, Carmen, a former miner who now led rural development programs. The idea, Mariana explained at the foundation's global launch, is that every woman who has returned her wallet helps other women find and return theirs. 5 years after the Nobel Prize, Mariana was 60 years old and had decided to begin gradually reducing her participation in the daily operations of her organizations. Mateo now directed the Popular University. Clara coordinated all the community centers in Mexico. Patricia led the Latin American expansion of the foundation. How does it feel to be the organizational grandmother of all these initiatives? A journalista asked in an interview for the 25th anniversary of Finding the Wallet. It feels like having planted a tree that now bears fruit on its own. Mariana replied, I no longer need to water the branches because the roots are strong enough. Your greatest satisfaction after all these years? Mariana thought for a moment, looking out the window toward her university campus, where hundreds of students walked between classes, that I'm no longer the exception. That girls growing up in neighborhoods like mine no longer think they have to choose between being honest or being successful. They know they can be both. And your plans for the future? Write a book, not about social policy or community development, about the importance of returning wallets, about how seemingly small acts can change the world. Do you already have a title? The Wallet That Changed Everything, a story about the power of doing what's right. The book was published 2 years later and became an international bestseller, not because it was inspiring or hopeful, but because it was honest about the difficulties of social change and realistic about what's needed to create lasting transformation. But more important than sales were the letters Mariana began receiving from readers around the world. A woman in Bangladesh wrote, After reading your book, I decided to return extra money I had been mistakenly paid at my job. My boss was so impressed with my honesty that he promoted me to supervisor. Now I lead a team of 20 people. A man in Brazil wrote, Your story inspired me to leave my job at a company that was harming the environment. Now I work for an NGO that protects the Amazon rainforest. I earn less money but sleep better at night. A university student in the Philippines wrote, I grew up like you, poor and invisible. Your book taught me I don't have to wait for someone to see me to start acting like someone valuable. Now I lead the tutoring program for first-generation students at my university. Every letter confirmed what Mariana had believed from the beginning, that everyone has wallets to return, that everyone can choose to do what's right, that everyone has the power to create change. On her 70th birthday, Mariana organized a special celebration, not in an elegant hotel or event hall, but in the central plaza of her childhood neighborhood, the same plaza where she had given her first public speeches 20 years ago. Thousands of people came from around the world. Community center directors, university graduates, program beneficiaries, world leaders, academics, and journalists. But what most excited Mariana were the people from her neighborhood, who had been there from the beginning. Doña Carmen, now 80 years old, who had been her first employee to become a program director. Don Roberto, who had transformed his candy stand into a small chain of cafes that employed 20 neighborhood youth. Clara, her best friend,
who now directed a network of 200 community centers throughout Mexico. And of course, Alejandro, her life partner for more than 20 years, who had been witness and participant in every moment of the transformation. "Is there anything you would change about these past 25 years?" he asked during the toast. "Nothing," Mariana replied without hesitation. "Not even the difficult moments, because they were necessary to get here. Not even the doubts, the fears, the sleepless nights, especially those, because they taught me to value what I have now." Mateo, now 40 years old and father of 2 children, approached with his kids. "Grandma," said the older granddaughter, 7 years old, "tell us again the story of the wallet." Mariana picked up her granddaughter and looked around. The plaza was full of people whose lives had been touched in some way by a wallet found on the street 25 years ago. "Once upon a time," she began, using the magic words children love, "there was a woman who felt invisible." And she began the story again, this time for a new generation, for children who would grow up in a world where returning the wallet wouldn't be extraordinary but expected, where honesty would be valued, where each person's potential would be recognized regardless of their origin. While she spoke, looking at the attentive faces of her grandchildren, Mariana thought about all the wallets that continued lost in the world, waiting to be found by people willing to do what's right. She thought about all the opportunities that would be born from those moments of honesty, about all the lives that would change, about all the good that would be created. The story would continue. There would always be lost wallets. There would always be people willing to return them. And there would always be the possibility that a simple act of honesty would change, not just one life but the world.
"And did they all live happily ever after?" asked her younger grandson. "No," Mariana smiled. "They lived honestly ever after, and that turned out to be much better than happiness. Have you ever lived through or known someone who has gone through something similar? Have you had that moment in your life where a small decision, seemingly insignificant, it changed everything that came after? I'd love to read your response in the comments. Share your story, or the story of someone you know who has demonstrated that origin doesn't determine destiny. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that we all have value beyond our circumstances, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I need this message to reach all the Marianas out there, who are cleaning offices at midnight, who are walking through dusty streets with dreams bigger than their circumstances, who are waiting for someone to really see them, because each one of them has a wallet waiting to be returned. And each one of them has the power to change not only their own life, but the lives of everyone around them. They just need the courage to believe in themselves as much as I believe in them right now. I made some calls, spoke y with other employees, and finally escorted her to the 32nd floor. Alejandro Rivas personally came down to receive her in the reception area. He was a tall man, 40 years old, with dark hair combed back and eyes that conveyed hard-earned authority. He wore a gray suit that fit him perfectly, and when he smiled, Mariana noticed it was a genuine smile, not the rehearsed smile she had learned to recognize in years of serving others. "You must be the person who found my wallet," he said, extending his hand. "Alejandro Rivas, pleased to meet you." "Mariana Castellanos," she replied, feeling her own hand tremble slightly. She didn't know if it was from nerves, or from the difference in worlds that touched in that handshake. "You can't imagine how grateful I am. Yesterday I lost my wallet downtown, and thought I'd never see it again. How can I compensate you?" Mariana shook her head. "It's not necessary, sir. I just did what any decent person would do." But Alejandro insisted. He took out some bills from the recently recovered wallet. "Please, at least let me cover your transportation costs and time." "It's really not necessary," Mariana repeated, but he had already put the money in her hand. While returning to her neighborhood on the metro, Mariana couldn't stop thinking about that encounter. There was something in Alejandro Rivas's eyes that didn't fit with the image she had of powerful men. She had seen genuine gratitude, not condescension. She had seen surprise, as if he too didn't expect that honesty. 2 weeks later, while organizing inventory at Hogar y Más, Mr. Ramirez approached with an expression that didn't bode well. "Mariana, I need to speak with you." They sat in the small back office, among boxes of products and yellowed invoices. The air smelled of new plastic and accumulated resignation. "The company is going through difficulties," he began, without looking her in the eyes. "They're going to restructure everything. We might have to close this branch." The words fell on her like concrete blocks. "When? We don't know exactly. It could be weeks, it could be months. I just wanted you to be prepared." That night, after putting Mateo to bed, Mariana sat on the small balcony of their apartment and cried silently. She saw the city lights extend to the horizon, millions of lives continuing while hers slowly crumbled. How was she going to explain to her son that maybe they would have to move? How was she going to find another job without solid references, without university studies, being a single mother in a country where that was still a stigma? The following days were a haze of anguish and searching. She left resumes at stores, offices, restaurants,
Always the same response, "We'll let you know if something comes up." Or worse, looks that judged her before she opened her mouth, questions about her marital status that had nothing to do with her work capacity. One afternoon, while returning from another failed interview, she saw a familiar figure standing in front of Mateo's school, Alejandro Rivas, but dressed more casually, in jeans and a light blue shirt. He seemed completely out of place among the neighborhood mothers, but there was something in his posture that suggested he didn't care. "Mrs. Castellanos," he greeted her when he saw her approaching. "Excuse me for looking for you here. I asked at your work, and they told me I could find you at this time." Mariana felt her stomach tighten. "Is something wrong?" "Quite the opposite. I wanted to invite you for coffee. There's something I'd like to discuss with you." They sat in a small cafe near the school, one of those places with formica tables and thick glass cups where neighbors gathered to talk about life. Alejandro ordered black coffee, Mariana chamomile tea, because it was the cheapest thing on the menu. "I've been thinking a lot about our encounter," he began. "It's not common to find people like you in my line of work. People like me, honest, genuine, without hidden agendas." Alejandro stirred his coffee slowly. "Can I ask you a personal question? Why did you return the wallet?" Mariana looked at him confused. "Why wouldn't I return it?" "Because there was enough money there to solve many problems. Because no one would have seen you take it. Because—" He stopped, as if he realized he was revealing more than he intended. "Because in my experience, very few people would have done what you did. My grandmother always said that one can be poor, but not a thief. That honesty is the only thing that really belongs to us." Alejandro nodded slowly, as if those words reminded him of something he had forgotten. "What do you do for work, Mrs. Castellanos?" Mariana told him about Hogar y Más, about the possible restructuring, about her fears. She didn't know why she was telling all this to a stranger, but there was something in his way of listening that calmed her.
"My company, Esser Finale, is involved in the restructurings." Mariana's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Innovatech Solutions has contracts with several store chains. We're developing systems to optimize their operations." He leaned forward. "But I want you to know that not everything is lost. There are ways to make these changes without people losing their jobs." During the following weeks, Alejandro began visiting the neighborhood more frequently. At first the neighbors looked at him with suspicion. A man in an expensive suit walking through the dusty streets wasn't something they saw every day. But gradually, his presence became less strange. He shopped at local stores, greeted the children, sat in the park to observe neighborhood life. Clara, Mariana's best friend and neighbor for 10 years, didn't hide her concern. "I don't like any of this, Mariana. What does a man like that want with you? Rich people don't do anything without expecting something in return." "It's not what you think, Clara. We're just talking about work, about possible solutions for the store situation." "Ay, Mariana, you're very naive. That type of man sees women like us as entertainment. Do you think he's going to leave his world of luxuries to stay around here?" But Mariana had begun to feel something she had forgotten existed: respect. Alejandro listened when she spoke, asked for her opinion on things that went beyond work. He had told her about his own past, about how he had grown up in a neighborhood not very different from hers before education and ambition took him to another world. "You know what I miss the most?" he had told her one afternoon while they walked through San Juan Market. "The sense of community. In my building I can live 5 years without knowing my neighbor's name. Here everyone knows each other, takes care of each other. They also meddle in everyone's lives," Mariana had joked, but she had noticed the melancholy in his voice. One morning, Mariana arrived at Hogar y Más to find Mr. Ramirez with an expression she hadn't seen before. He seemed nervous, even scared. "Mariana, come here, I need to ask you something." He took her to the office and closed the door. "Do you know anyone from Innovatech Solutions?" Mariana's stomach tightened. "Why?" "Because yesterday I received a call from their office. They specifically asked about you. They wanted to know about your work performance, your reliability, your personal situation." Mariana felt the world sway under her feet. "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that you're one of my best employees, punctual, honest, responsible." "But Mariana," he leaned forward, "why is a company like that asking about you?" That afternoon, Mariana waited for Alejandro in the cafe where they had first met. When he arrived, she already had her words prepared. "Why didn't you tell me that your company was the one closing the stores where I work?" Alejandro sat down slowly. "Because it's not as simple as it seems. For me it is simple. Either you're honest or you're not. Since when did you know that my job was at risk because of your company?" "From the first day. But listen to me." He raised his hand when she made a motion to get up. "The truth is that when I met you, when I saw what you had done by returning the wallet, something changed in me. I began to question many decisions I had made without thinking about the people who lived them. And am I supposed to thank you for that? For realizing that we're real people?
The words came out with a bitterness that surprised Mariana. It had been years since she had felt such anger, such concentrated pain in a few phrases. "You have every right to be angry," Alejandro said, "but give me a chance to explain what I'm trying to do." During the next hour, Alejandro told her about the pressures within his company, about investors who only saw numbers on spreadsheets, about his struggle to find alternatives that were profitable but humane. He spoke to her about a project he had been secretly developing, converting the stores that would close into community centers that offered technological services, job training, and spaces for local entrepreneurs. "I need someone who knows these communities from the inside," he concluded. "Someone people trust, who understands their real needs. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you the opportunity to be part of something that could change the way companies relate to communities." Mariana remained silent for several minutes, processing everything she had heard. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part, the one that had learned to distrust pretty promises, resisted. "And if your board of directors decides it's too expensive, and if the investors don't approve the project, what happens to all the people who are going to believe in this promise? Then we'll fight to the end, but I need your help to prove it can work." That night Mariana couldn't sleep.
She stayed in the kitchen, drinking tea and looking at Mateo's most recent school photo stuck to the refrigerator. Her son smiled with the smile he had inherited from her, that smile she had been losing little by little with each disappointment, each silent humiliation. Did she have the right to risk her stability, however precarious it was, for a promise that might not be fulfilled? But what stability? Her current job would disappear anyway. At least this way she would have the opportunity to fight for something better. The next morning she called Alejandro. "I accept, but with conditions. Tell me. First, I want a contract that protects all current employees during the transition. Second, I want total transparency about the budget and timelines. Third, if this doesn't work, your company takes responsibility for helping every displaced person find equivalent work." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then a soft laugh. "You're tougher negotiating than my corporate lawyers. I've learned that if you don't defend yourself, no one else will." The following months were a roller coaster of hopes and disappointments. Mariana found herself navigating a completely new world. Meetings with executives who spoke in a language of figures and projections. Presentations with graphs that looked like hieroglyphics. Negotiations where every word had the weight of dozens of jobs. Alejandro supported her, but she could see the tension in his own shoulders. His partners weren't convinced about the project. Some saw it as an unnecessary expense, others as a distraction from the company's main objectives. "He's using you," Clara told her every time she saw her arrive late from meetings. "He's playing with your hope to wash his company's conscience." "Maybe," Mariana replied, "but what's the alternative? Stay with my arms crossed while everything crumbles." One afternoon, while reviewing plans for the future community center in the temporary office they had assigned her, Mariana heard raised voices coming from Alejandro's office. The door was ajar, and she couldn't help but listen. "This sentimental project of yours is costing us resources we need for more profitable operations," said a voice she recognized as the financial director's. "It's not a sentimental project, Ricardo. It's a long-term investment in social capital and corporate reputation." "Social capital? Are you really going to risk the company for a woman you found on the street?" Mariana felt her blood freeze in her veins. "Watch how you talk about her," Alejandro responded with a coldness she had never heard in his voice. "Alejandro, be realistic. This woman doesn't have a university education, doesn't have experience in corporate management, doesn't have the necessary connections to make this work. You're putting her in a position where she's destined to fail. Or maybe I'm putting her in a position where she can demonstrate that talent and dedication matter more than titles and connections." Mariana moved away from the door, feeling she had heard something she shouldn't have heard, but the words kept resonating in her head for days. Was she destined to fail? Was she really capable of handling a project of this magnitude? Doubts began to grow like weeds in her mind. In meetings she felt small among all those executives with their expensive suits and specialized vocabulary. When she asked questions, sometimes she saw condescending looks as if she were a child playing in an adult world. One night, after a particularly difficult meeting where several investors had aggressively questioned all aspects of the project, Mariana came home completely defeated. Mateo was waiting for her with a drawing he had made at school, a happy family in front of a house with a garden. "Do you like it, Mommy? It's our new house when we have more money." Mariana hugged her son and cried silently in his hair. What was she doing? Was she risking her son's future for a dream that maybe was too big for her? The next day she made a decision. She requested a meeting with Alejandro. "I think you should look for someone more qualified to lead this project," she told him without preamble. Alejandro looked at her completely surprised. "What are you talking about? I heard what they said in your office the other day. And they're right. I don't have the education, the experience, the connections. I'm set up to fail and take everyone with me." Alejandro remained silent for a long moment.
Then he got up from his desk and approached the window overlooking the city center. "Do you know what I was doing the day I lost my wallet?" he said finally. Mariana shook her head. "I was coming from a meeting where we had decided to close 15 stores and fire 200 people, all to optimize costs. I didn't even know the names of those stores, much less the people who worked there." He turned toward her. "That wallet had the final documents of that decision."
Documents you could have seen when you opened it. But I didn't see them. I only saw the identification and the money. Exactly. You didn't snoop. You didn't judge. You didn't take advantage. You simply did what was right. I approached and sat in front of her. "Do you know how many people with masters and doctorates have passed through this company and made decisions that have harmed thousands of families? How many qualified executives have put profits above everything else?" Mariana still wasn't convinced. "But that doesn't mean I'm the right person. Do you think I was the right person when I started?" "Mariana, I grew up in Neza. My father sold corn on the street and my mother cleaned offices. The difference between you and me isn't talent or ability. It's that I had opportunities you haven't had. Until now." During the following weeks, Alejandro changed his strategy. Instead of taking Mariana to corporate meetings where she felt out of place, he began bringing executives to the neighborhood. He forced them to walk through the dusty streets, to talk with merchants, to see the faces of children playing in the park. Mariana guided them through her world with a confidence that surprised even herself. Here she knew every story, every need, every deferred dream. She showed them Doña Carmen, who had worked in the store for 20 years and supported 3 grandchildren, Don Roberto, who had lost his job at the factory and now sold candy on the corner, the young mothers who needed daycare to be able to work. She would tell them, pointing to the constant movement of the community. "Here there's no lack of talent or desire to work. There's just lack of opportunity." Slowly, some of the executives began to change their minds. Not all, but enough so that the project wouldn't be cancelled immediately. Ricardo Dominguez, the financial director who had been most skeptical, approached Mariana after one of these visits. "I must admit I didn't understand what Alejandro saw in you," he told her with a frankness that surprised her. "But after walking around here, hearing the stories you told me, I think I'm starting to understand. You don't see numbers on a sheet, you see real people." "Numbers matter too," Mariana replied. "But behind every number is a family that needs to eat, pay rent, send their children to school. If you forget that, the numbers don't mean anything." The project began to take real shape. It was decided that 5 stores would be converted into pilot community centers, including the one at Hogar y Más. Each center would have spaces for technology training, offices for local entrepreneurs, daycares for working mothers, and a commercial area where products made by the community would be sold. Mariana was officially named General Coordinator of the Community Development Project. Her first official day in the new offices, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at her reflection. She wore a navy blue suit that Alejandro had helped her choose, comfortable but professional shoes, a folder full of plans and projections. "Who are you?" she asked her reflection quietly. For the first time in years, the answer wasn't "I'm Mateo's mom" or "I'm the store employee." It was something broader, more powerful. "I'm someone who can make a difference." But with power came challenges she hadn't anticipated. Neighbors who had known her all her life now looked at her with suspicion, as if she had betrayed her origins. Other company employees who felt she didn't deserve the position. Constant pressure to prove she was up to expectations. Clara had completely stopped talking to her. One afternoon, Mariana found her at the market and tried to approach. "Clara, we need to talk." "Now you have time to talk to me? I thought you were too busy with your new rich friends." "You know it's not like that. You'll always be my best friend." "Really? Because ever since you're with that guy, you don't have time for anything. Not for me, not for your son. Mateo is at my house almost every afternoon because you're in meetings." The words hurt because they had some truth. Mariana had been working long hours, arriving late to pick up Mateo, missing school functions, home theater performances, bedtime conversations. "I'm doing this for him," Mariana defended herself, "so he'll have a better future. And at what cost? Are you going to sacrifice his childhood for a future that may never come?" That night, Mariana stayed in Mateo's bed, watching him sleep. Her son had grown so much in recent months. He no longer sought her out as much to read him stories, had learned to heat up dinner by himself, had stopped telling her all the details of his day at school. Was she losing her son trying to give him a better future? The next obstacle came on a Tuesday morning. Mariana was reviewing proposals from local suppliers for the community centers when she received a call from Mateo's school principal. "Mrs. Castellanos, I need you to come immediately. Mateo had an altercation with another boy." When she arrived at school, she found her son sitting in the principal's office with red eyes from crying, a bruise on his cheek, and his shirt torn. "What happened, my love?" "Jaime told me that you're now the boss's girlfriend, and that's why we have money." I told him it wasn't true, and he pushed me. Then I pushed him back, and Mariana felt her heart tighten. The neighborhood gossip had reached her son's school, and now he had to defend himself from rumors he didn't even fully understand. Mrs. Castellanos. The principal intervened. I understand you're going through important changes in your work life, but we need to make sure this doesn't affect Mateo's school environment. Of course, Mariana replied, but inside she felt like she was navigating turbulent waters without knowing which direction to go. That afternoon she had a difficult conversation with Mateo. Mijo, do you know what I'm working on now? Yes, Mommy, you're helping to make the neighborhood better. And do you know why it's important? Mateo was thoughtful for a moment. Because you want us to have a better house? Mariana crouched down to be at his height. Because I want when you grow up, you live in a world where it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor to be treated well. Where all children have the same opportunities to fulfill their dreams. Like Mr. Alejandro? The question took her by surprise. What do you think of Mr. Alejandro? I like him. He doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid, like other adults do. And he makes you laugh. It's been a long time since I saw you laugh like that. Mariana hadn't thought about that. But it was true. Alejandro made her laugh. Not with forced jokes or condescending comments, but with intelligent observations about life, stories from his own childhood, conversations that made her feel seen and valued as a person, not just as a struggling single mother. There was something else she hadn't dared to acknowledge. She was falling in love with him. The project had created a natural intimacy between them. Hours of planning, neighborhood visits, conversations that extended late into the night about dreams and frustrations. Alejandro had told her about the loneliness of his position, about the constant pressure of making decisions that affected thousands of lives, about his fear of having become insensitive after so many years in the corporate world. You remind me why I started all this, he had told her one night while they walked through the neighborhood plaza. You remind me that behind every business decision are real people with real stories. But Mariana didn't dare interpret those moments as anything more than professional gratitude. How could a man like him, with everything he had, be genuinely interested in a woman like her? The answer came in a completely unexpected way. On a Friday afternoon, while organizing papers in her new office, she heard a conversation in the hallway. Ricardo Dominguez, the financial director, was talking on the phone. Yes, I understand the investor's concern, but you have to recognize that Alejandro is playing his cards very intelligently with this social responsibility project. Of course he cares about the woman, but he's too smart to risk everything for a romance. This is pure corporate marketing, an emotional story of CEO who helps poor single mother. The media are going to eat this up. No, I don't think it's anything serious with her. Have you seen where she lives? How she dresses? Alejandro is playing the long game. When this project is established and generates the publicity we need, she'll go back to her place and he'll continue with his life. Mariana felt the world vanish under her feet. Every word of that conversation stabbed into her chest like a knife. Had everything been a marketing strategy? Her story, her struggle, her hopes, were they just tools to clean up the company's image? She stayed in the office until very late, unable to move, processing what she had heard. When she finally got home, Mateo was already asleep. She sat at the kitchen table, the same place where she had made the decision to return the wallet months ago, and cried like she hadn't cried in years. Had she been a fool? Had she confused professional manipulation with genuine interest? All those intimate conversations, those smiles, those moments of connection, had they been acting? The next morning, Alejandro immediately noticed something had changed. Are you okay? You seem distant. I'm fine, Mariana replied, but her voice sounded hollow, even to herself. During the weekly project meeting, Mariana behaved with a professional coldness that puzzled everyone. She presented her reports, answered technical questions, but avoided any personal comment or moment of connection with Alejandro. After the meeting, he followed her to her office. Mariana, what's happening? You've been acting strange all day. Nothing's happening. I'm just trying to keep things professional. Professional? Mariana, we're friends. We've been friends from the beginning. Friends. The word came out with more bitterness than she had intended. Or am I just part of your public relations strategy? Alejandro went completely still. What are you talking about? I heard Ricardo talking on the phone yesterday, about how all this is corporate marketing, about how my story is perfect for cleaning up the company's image. She saw the color drain from Alejandro's face. Mariana, let me explain. Explain what? That I've been a fool? That I believed you really cared when it was really just part of your business plan? It's not like that. The response came out with a force that surprised both of them. Ricardo doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, the project has image benefits for the company, but that was never the main motive. So what was the main motive? Alejandro remained silent for a moment that felt eternal. You, he said finally. The motive was you. Mariana felt something move in her chest, but she resisted believing him. Don't say things you don't feel just to calm the situation. Mariana, I fell in love with you from the day you returned the wallet, not with the story you could represent, not with the project you could lead, but with you. With your honesty, with your strength, with the way you see the world. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. But you were right about something. Alejandro continued. There is a huge difference between our worlds, and as much as I feel what I feel, I don't have the right to ask you to risk your life for my feelings. And if I wanted to risk my life, the question came out before Mariana could stop it. She had been keeping those feelings for months, denying them to herself, convincing herself they were impossible. Alejandro approached slowly, as if he feared she would vanish if he moved too fast. Would you want to? It scares me, Mariana admitted. I'm scared to trust. I'm scared that the neighborhood rumors are true. I'm scared that my feelings are stronger than yours. But I'm also scared of living the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had been brave. The kiss came slowly, softly, loaded with months of tension and fear and hope. When they separated, Mariana felt that something fundamental had changed in her world, not just in her relationship with Alejandro, but in her relationship with herself. What do we do now? She asked. Now, Alejandro said, we finish this project, together, and then we see where this takes us. The following weeks were a delicate balance between the professional and personal. In work meetings, they maintained appropriate distance, but in the afternoons, they walked together through the neighborhood, sharing stories of their pasts, planning a future that was still uncertain but no longer impossible. Clatter eventually approached Mariana for a difficult but necessary conversation. I acted like a fool, her friend admitted. I was jealous, scared that you would abandon me for your new life. I would never abandon you, Clatter. You're my family. I know, and I've been watching how you behave with that man. You can see it in his eyes when he looks at you. It's not condescension or pity. It's real love. The community center's project was inaugurated 6 months later with a celebration that brought the whole neighborhood together. The 5 pilot centers were operating at full capacity. They had computer classes for children, entrepreneurship workshops for adults, daycares for working mothers, spaces for community events. Doña Carmen, the employee who had worked 20 years at Hogar y Más, now directed the job training program for older adults. Don Roberto had opened a small cafe inside one of the centers. The neighborhood's young mothers had formed a handicrafts cooperative that sold throughout the metropolitan area. During the inauguration ceremony, Mariana went up to the improvised stage to address the community. She saw the faces of neighbors she had known all her life, mixed with those of executives and officials who had come for the official occasion. A year ago, she began, I was just a store employee who returned a wallet because my grandmother taught me it was the right thing to do. I never imagined that simple act would change not only my life, but the life of our entire community. She paused, looking for Alejandro in the crowd. He was standing among the neighbors, not in the VIP area designated for executives. I learned that real changes don't come from top to bottom, but from genuine human connections. When people really see each other, when they listen to each other, when they respect each other beyond differences in class or education, that's when magic happens. The applause was deafening, but what moved Mariana most was seeing Mateo in the front row, clapping with eyes bright with pride. 6 months after the inauguration, Mariana received an unexpected call. The mayor of Mexico City wanted to meet with her to discuss expanding the model to other areas of the city. It's incredible, she told Alejandro that night while they had dinner at the new restaurant that had opened in one of the community centers. 2 years ago I was struggling to keep my job at a store. Now the mayor wants my advice on social policy. Does it surprise you that much? Yes, she admitted. All my life they told me that my value was limited by my education, my social class, my marital status, that there was a ceiling for people like me. And now, Mariana looked around her. The restaurant was full of neighborhood families, children doing homework at the tables while their parents worked in the community center next door, young couples planning their small businesses. Now I know that ceilings only exist if we accept them. Alejandro took her hand across the table. There's something I want to ask you. Mariana felt her heart accelerate. They had talked about the future in general terms, but always with the caution of those who have learned that life can change unexpectedly. The company wants to expand the project nationally. They're going to need someone to direct it from Mexico City, someone who understands both the corporate vision and community needs. Are you offering me another job? I'm offering you a career. I'm offering you the opportunity to change the way Mexican companies relate to their communities. He leaned forward. But I'm also asking if you want to build that career with me, not just as work partners but as life partners. The question hung in the air, loaded with possibility and fear and hope. And Mateo? Mariana asked finally. Mateo already told me he agrees. In fact, it was his idea that I bring you here tonight to ask you this. Mariana laughed, a laugh that came mixed with tears. You already talked to my son without consulting me? I asked his permission. I didn't make a decision for you. There's a difference. Mariana looked out the window toward the plaza where she had grown up, where she had struggled, where she had learned to believe in herself. She saw children playing in the illuminated park, couples walking hand in hand, families coming out of the community centers after night classes. Yes, she said finally. Yes to everything. The kiss that followed was different from all the previous ones. It wasn't just passion or relief or gratitude. It was promise. 2 years later, Mariana was standing on the stage of the Mexico City Convention Center, addressing an international conference on corporate community development. In the audience were CEOs from companies throughout Latin America, government officials, academics, community leaders. Real change, she was saying, begins with something very simple, seeing people as people, not as statistics or problems to solve. Among the audience, she saw Alejandro, now her husband of 6 months, applauding next to Mateo, who had grown into a confident 9-year-old, who spoke with equal confidence to executives and neighborhood children. 4 years ago, she continued, I was a single mother who cleaned houses on weekends, to pay rent. Today I direct an initiative that has created more than 3,000 direct jobs and has benefited 50 communities throughout Mexico. Not because I changed who I am, but because someone saw me for who I really was. After the conference, a young woman approached her. She had the same look of determination mixed with fear that Mariana remembered having years ago. Mrs. Rivas, the woman said, my name is Sofia. I'm a single mother. I work at a factory in Tijuana, and I have an idea for a community project but I don't know how to start. Mariana smiled, remembering her own similar conversation with Alejandro years ago. Tell me your idea, she said, and let's see how we can make it reality. While listening to Sofia explain her vision for a cooperative childcare center, Mariana thought about all the moments of her life that had led her here. The wallet found on the street, the decision to return it, the nights of doubt, the difficult conversations, the risks taken, the humiliations overcome. Every painful moment had been necessary. Every moment of fear had been a step toward something bigger. She hadn't changed who she was. She had discovered who she had always been capable of being. That night, in her new house in a middle-class neighborhood, where Mateo had his own room and she had an office, Mariana stayed awake thinking about all the women like Sofia, like who she had been, who were somewhere in the city cleaning offices after midnight, walking through dusty streets with dreams bigger than their circumstances. What are you thinking about? Alejandro asked, noticing she was awake. About all the wallets that are still lost out there, she replied. About all the people who are going to find them. About whether they'll have the courage to return them. And if they don't have it, then we have to create a world where returning the wallet is the obvious option, not the extraordinary one. The next day, Mariana announced her new initiative, a national fund to support projects led by women from marginalized communities. It would be called Honest Hands in honor of the phrase her grandmother used to repeat. 6 months later, the fund had approved loans for 50 projects. A year later, 150. The media began calling Mariana the CEO who rose from the street, a title that made her uncomfortable because of its condescension but that she decided to adopt and redefine. Yes, she would say in interviews, I rose from the street. Like millions of Mexican women who have talent, ideas, dreams, but not opportunities. The difference isn't in talent. It's in who decides to bet on it. In a particularly memorable interview with a journalist who insisted on asking about her miraculous rise, Mariana finally lost her patience. Miracle, she repeated. Working 18 hours a day for 2 years is a miracle. Studying at night after putting my son to bed is a miracle. Risking the only stability I had for an uncertain opportunity is a miracle. But you went from being a store employee to directing a multi-million-dollar company. I went from being a store employee that no one saw to being a director that people can no longer ignore. The talent was always there. What changed was that someone decided to see it. Clara, who now directed the first community center that had opened in their neighborhood, told her later, I liked seeing you angry in that interview. For years you were too polite with people who didn't deserve your courtesy. I've learned that kindness is important, but respect is earned, and I've earned the right to demand respect. 5 years after the day she found the wallet, Mariana was sitting in her office reviewing proposals for the international expansion of her programs, when she received an unexpected call. Mrs. Rivas, this is the assistant to the Secretary of Social Development. The Secretary would like to meet with you to discuss the possibility of implementing your community development models as national policy. Mariana hung up the phone and sat in silence for several minutes. Then she dialed Alejandro's number. Guess who just called? Oprah. Mariana laughed. Better. The federal government wants to adopt our programs as a national model. There was silence on the other end of the line. Mariana, that's extraordinary. Do you realize what that means? It means what started with a lost wallet could change the lives of millions of families. It means my wife is officially more successful than I am. It means we're a good team. That night, during family dinner,
Mateo, now 13 years old, and with the same bright smile but a new self-confidence, raised his glass of water as if it were champagne. A toast, he announced, to my mom, who went from finding wallets to changing the country. And to you, Mariana replied, who reminded me every day why it was worth risking everything. And for me, Alejandra joked. For you, Mariana said, taking his hand, for seeing what I couldn't see in myself. But that night, lying in bed, Mariana thought about all the versions of herself she had left behind. The store employee who counted coins to buy milk, the single mother who cried silently after putting her son to bed, the woman who felt invisible walking through streets where she had lived all her life. She hadn't left them behind, she realized. She had carried them with her, transforming them into strength, into perspective, into empathy. Every humiliation had become determination. Every moment of invisibility had become vision to see other invisible people. Every tear shed in silence had become a voice for those who still couldn't speak. The next day, she accepted the meeting with the Secretary of Social Development. 6 months later, Mexico announced the National Corporate Community Development Initiative, based on the models Mariana had developed.